But there's a lot that I've seen. Well, we believe that those are the restless spirits of people who died from smallpox. They were gone before their time, and they were loved, and they loved, and they had some unfinished things that they needed to do, but we're not allowed to because of this disease. So they're there looking for rest, looking for peace, and haven't found it. We have ways we can help them find that peace with death feasts, or just releasing them, allowing them, opening the door for them to go. And there are ceremonies for that we can do, and some of those have to be done if they're bad spirits, or what we call demons today. Then it takes more. It takes a good fight. It takes 3 or 4 people, and I've been involved in those fights before. And when you go through a certain amount of training in your life as a native person in ceremony, and you're looked at as having a strong spirit and a potential, and you're really not that afraid of too much, because you can't be afraid, because then they feed on that, and you'll be the weak link, and they'll go after you. So we were at one place up in Canada, in this Tobic reservation, right after salmon fishing season, and they take these salmon that are 5 feet long, and the small ones they call grills because you throw them on the grill. They're about 3 feet long, and they take those fish and they'll wrap them in a grocery bag, not a grocery bag, a garbage bag, and just put them in the freezer and let them guts and head and all and freeze them, because when it's time to prepare those, when you want to eat them, they taste fresh. Well, this one woman called, and I called this woman who was training me there at the time, said, I have a problem. There's something in my basement. And so when the clan mother went there, she called me, and she said, you need to get up here. I said, take me 3 hours. It's the middle of the night. She goes, you need to get up here. By the time I got there, she had called 3 or 4 other people too. And we all came from different areas, Micmac and Passamaquoddy Mouse, so we all converged at about the same time. She had really good timing. And what was happening was, whatever this was taking huge bites out of the salmon, frozen salmon, big 5-foot salmon, literally taking bites out of the salmon and throwing the salmon up the stairs towards the door. And the salmon were breaking in half, and when you could hear it, boom, boom, and you could hear this sound down there. You could hear some ripping of frozen flesh. It's a very distinct sound, and we consider that in English demonic. It's not something that was ever of this world. It's something that escaped from that road of death, that was never part of this world. It's a whole different thing. Somehow that got in, and it got there, and to get rid of those is quite a feat, and quite scary, actually. And especially when they're throwing things at you and you can see there is nobody there physically, and then all of a sudden they let you see them for a second. They suck up enough energy to let you see them for a second just to try to scare you, and then you know what you got to deal with, and it's the wrong thing to do. He's like, oh, I know what you are now, and you can deal with that. You can call in what you need to call in. So I don't know what the question was, but that's sort of like, I guess, spirits and ghosts, and that's sort of like how we believe it. And if you see a spirit, we believe you should say hi. They're confused, they're lost, or they're just coming to say hi. And sometimes you see a spirit and you'll say, oh, that's my grandmother. But it might not be. It might be a deceiver. And how you can tell is, if you know your grandmother, there's one thing that you can never, ever, ever disguise, and that's somebody's hands. How they held things, what their hands looked like. So the ones that deceive us in our dreams and in reality, the spirits that we see, we always have maintained the ability to look at their hands, whether it's in a dream or in real life if we see a spirit, because if it's the bad ones that are actual deceased people that have gone and they've been called back by somebody to do bad, they don't know what they're doing bad. But if they're called back and they're asked to do something bad against somebody, well, who would you welcome? Somebody you recognize, right? So you welcome that spirit into your dream or into your house, and all of a sudden you look at their hands and you say, oh my God, that's not their hands. That's not their hands. That's a deceiver. That's the bad ones. But those were the ones that were alive. And you can send them back. And once you do that, they can never be called in for bad again.
I'm sorry, I have to get going, but thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah.
Can everyone else say?
I can stay for a little bit longer. I'm gonna be out of here by like 6:45-ish.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, why don't we just go then? Because you got some good questions on here that you probably want to get to.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we could. Do you know anything about the haunted buildings on campus?
Well, I've had personal experiences here on campus, and I told him about it, and that's how you got interested and asked me if I'd be willing to come talk to you guys. And I think, it was inadvertent how it was all brought up in the first place, but Dunn Hall is where, in 1995, it was converted from a dormitory into office space. So it was in Corbett, right across from Dunn Hall. Not DP Corbett, but Corbett. And so I spent 2 years here on campus as a student. Well, that was a dorm. And then in 1995, when we moved in there, the second floor was the worst. My grandfather, Ted Mitchell, who was brought up in the same way I was brought up, and actually was one of the biggest influences of how I was able to be considered a storyteller and whatever. And so he was on the second floor, which was the floor we were assigned to, we being the Wabanaki Center in the physical space. But when we got there, there was this woman that would, rainy, sunny days, didn't matter, day or night, didn't matter. She'd just show up. You'd look up and you'd say, hey, what can I do for you? And she's gone. And so it got to the point where things started to happen, like things were being moved. It was like playful. But it got to the point where our students couldn't focus. My grandfather went up on the third floor, because that was unoccupied, and spent some time up there and said, I think we're going to come up here. And that's where we've been since. And he didn't know anything about this girl. But in the Native American Club, we used to do some drumming actually in my office now. And that used to be the student room. And we'd be in there, and we'd close the door, obviously, 7 o'clock at night. We'd close the door so that we're not bugging anybody if there's something going on. People are in the building. Usually by then there wasn't, but we'd close the door anyway, just to be nice. And a couple times, one time a woman opened the door and she stuck her head in, and she had long straight hair. And she had a headband on, a wrap that kind of had like a scarf that had the hangy thing, I don't know what you call them, how girls dress. But, but I looked at her and I was like, we were singing, so we didn't stop because she just smiled and went away. And all I could see was her hand on the door and they were looking in. Well, I saw her a couple times. I saw her going down the hall back to and all. And then one time I was alone in there, and I was taking advantage of the office because I was an undergrad student, and it was finals week, and it was in the fall. And so I was the only one there. We had a computer, and we had stuff, so I didn't have that at home. So I just said, I'll stay here, and I was working there. And she opened the door and came halfway in, and she's like, oh, sorry, and closed the door. And I opened the door. I was like, no, it's nobody. And so I asked my grandfather, I said, who's this woman? She's a student. Obviously, she's a student. I said, but she dresses weird. She dresses like 70s. And I knew 70s. I was born in 68. 70s were the time that I learned how not to dress. And so, I had the white bell bottoms and all that stuff too. As a, you know, when 1979 went away, I was already 11. So when I knew, so that's why it never was odd to me that she was dressed like that, because this is a university, people have that expression, and people are dressed every which way and any which way, and plus in the early 90s, that wasn't too far off from what I had seen growing up as far as how people dress, so it didn't bother me. Well, come to find out, this was a girl, there was a girl in the late 70s